They say the worst betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from those who smile to your face while stabbing you softly with indifference. For me, that person wore cologne that cost more than my weekly groceries, had teeth too white to trust, and went by the name Jared Hollis. At Vantage Metrics, a boutique analytics firm with a shiny downtown office and a toxic core, we prided ourselves on efficiency, innovation, and performance. At least, that was the glossy version they sold to clients. Internally, it was more like a silent war, where ideas were currency and visibility was power. I had neither. I was Maya Patel, senior analyst in the forecasting division. I had worked my way up from entry level with nothing but a scholarship degree, caffeine addiction, and a work ethic that bordered on masochism. I wasn't loud. I didn't golf. I didn't schmooze at happy hours or laugh too hard at the boss's jokes. But I got things done. And Jared was the kind of guy who could breeze into a meeting 5 minutes late, repeat exactly what I had said 15 minutes earlier, and walk out with a round of applause. It started small. A data model I built became our model in an email he sent to leadership. Then, a presentation I prepped turned into Jared's killer insights when he pitched it to the client. At first, I told myself it was accidental, miscommunication, teamwork. That tired corporate line, it's about the results, not the credit. But the truth festered in me like a paper cut beneath the surface. Then came the catalyst, the executive quarterly meeting. It was the biggest internal event of the year, where team leads presented performance summaries, Q4 forecasts, and innovation proposals. Jared was assigned to our department's slot. Fair enough. But the content? The models, the forecasting logic, the charts. Every single slide was mine. He didn't ask. He didn't even pretend to tweak them. Just downloaded the folder I had saved in our shared drive, slapped his initials on the front page, and waltzed into the boardroom like he'd given birth to the formulas himself. I sat in the back of that meeting room, stomach churning, as Jared strutted through my hard work. Graphs I had created in the dead of night. Projections I had checked and double-checked. He explained them with flair and practiced pauses. He even got a laugh from the CFO after telling a story about his process for identifying the projected uptick in Q1 earnings. My process. The applause he received at the end was deafening. The handshake from our VP, Lizette, stung like vinegar in an open wound. I remember walking back to my desk in a daze, the polite buzz of compliments still echoing around Jared as he basked in his stolen spotlight. Later that day, he leaned against the side of my cubicle and smirked. "Nice work on the slides, Maya," he said casually, like he was doing me a favor. "We made a killer team, huh?" I nodded slowly, biting back the thousand things I wanted to scream. He winked and walked off, humming a tune I recognized from the hold music in our conference calls. That night, I sat in my one-bedroom apartment, curled up on the couch with my laptop open and an untouched bowl of ramen by my side. I replayed the moment over and over, the laugh, the handshake, the slide with my formulas, and felt something shift inside me. It wasn't rage, not entirely. It was something colder, more precise. I opened a blank spreadsheet, not for projections, not for forecasts, for revenge, but not the reckless kind, not the movie-style outburst that gets you fired while the jerk gets promoted. No! If Jared wanted to ride the wave of my work, I'd let him. But next time, he wouldn't know what he was riding, until it dragged him straight underwater. 3 weeks passed, and Jared had become a legend in the office. Lizette started referring to him in meetings as our forecasting magician, and someone from the executive floor invited him to a private leadership dinner. Meanwhile, I remained in the shadows. Quiet, reliable, unseen. Until I wasn't. I started small. Subtle changes to the way I stored my files. Normally, I saved final reports in the shared departmental drive like everyone else. Now, I saved decoys. Flashy spreadsheets with sleek formatting and inflated projections that looked impressive but lacked a solid foundation. The real reports, the accurate, well-researched, board-ready files, those I kept private. And I waited. Jared's habits were as predictable as a rookie poker player. The minute he saw a file with a final timestamp, he pounced on it like a vulture in a Gucci tie. He didn't even question its legitimacy, just downloaded it, tweaked the font, maybe changed a chart title, and claimed it as his own. By the time the next executive strategy meeting rolled around, I had fed him enough fake data to write a Harvard case study on corporate self-destruction. The report he was about to present projected a 28% increase in Q1 growth based on a trend I completely fabricated by correlating regional engagement spikes with customer behavior that didn't even exist. I had even included a phony appendix section showing user segmentation analysis, complete with convincing but utterly meaningless graphs. I didn't just want to expose Jared. I wanted to make sure the only person who came out clean when the dust settled was me. The night before the presentation, I stayed late at the office under the pretense of running last-minute data validations. Jared popped his head into my cubicle around 7:45 p.m. Holding his leather satchel and wearing that smug expression he reserved for moments he thought he'd won. "Don't stay too late, Maya," he said with mock concern. "I've got it covered." "I know you do," I replied with a smile so sugary it could rot teeth. As he turned away, I could see the presentation file sticking out of his bag, printed and bound with the same blue cover I always used. The title page read, Q1 Market Penetration Strategy, Forecasting Division by Jared Hollis. Perfect. That night, I slept like a baby. The next morning, I wore my best blazer and brought popcorn. Not literally, but the emotional equivalent. I took a seat in the back row of the glass-paneled conference room and folded my hands politely as Jared stood before the senior leadership team. Lizette sat at the center of the long, glossy table, flanked by the CFO and two regional VPs. She nodded for Jared to begin. He launched into the presentation like a TED Talk wannabe, pacing with false gravitas and gesturing at the screen behind him. I watched the exact moment his voice faltered, a tiny hiccup, as he reached the first fabricated chart and paused. Something must have looked off, but he pushed forward. "Here we have a predictive model," he said, pointing at a curve that rose at a near vertical angle, showing engagement to conversion ratios climbing dramatically in the Northeast sector. The CFO squinted. "That's a steep curve." Jared nodded enthusiastically. "We analyzed behavior trends from the last 6 weeks and found a previously untapped segment of users between 45 to 60 with a strong ROI potential." Lizette narrowed her eyes. "I don't remember seeing that segment in last month's numbers." "Oh, it's new," Jared said too quickly. "Maya helped with the segmentation. She can back it up." My name landed in the room like a dropped plate. I smiled from my seat and gave a small wave. "I'm actually not familiar with those specific figures." Jared's face twitched. "But they were in the report," he stammered, flipping through the printed pages. Lizette's expression sharpened. "Jared, where exactly did this data come from?" It was pulled from the customer feedback platform. Right, Maya?" I tilted my head slightly. "We haven't run any segmentation from that platform in 3 months. The last dataset I reviewed didn't show any such trend." The silence stretched. Lizette turned slowly back to Jared. "So this projection is fictional?" I don't know how it got in there. It was in the file on the shared drive." "Which Maya manages," the CFO added, now deeply intrigued. Lizette looked at me. "Did you prepare the final report for today?" I met her gaze directly. "No, I submitted a preliminary outline 2 weeks ago, but I didn't finalize anything past that point. I assumed Jared was conducting his own research." Jared's face had drained of color. His jaw opened and closed like a fish flailing for oxygen, and I knew, without a doubt, that my trap had sprung. The meeting ended in an icy silence. No applause, no handshakes, just the low hum of the projector shutting off and the sound of Jared frantically stuffing his printouts back into his satchel. Lizette didn't say a word to him. She simply stood, adjusted her blazer, and left the room with the other executives. One of the VPs shot me a glance, curious, perhaps even impressed, but said nothing. Jared lingered for a moment, pretending to review his notes, clearly hoping someone might offer him a lifeline. No one did. Eventually, he walked out of the conference room like a man heading to his own execution. Back at my desk, I opened my inbox. A meeting request from Lizette was already waiting for me, set for 3 p.m. I clicked accept and leaned back in my chair. The satisfaction wasn't fiery. It was cool and quiet, like the final click of a lock turning into place. But I wasn't done yet. By the time I entered Lizette's office later that afternoon, Jared was already seated in one of the chairs across from her desk. His hair was a mess, and his collar was slightly wrinkled. A man unraveling. "Maya," Lizette said calmly, "thanks for joining us." I nodded and sat down without looking at Jared. Lizette folded her hands on her desk. "Jared has informed me there may have been some confusion about the source of the data in today's presentation." "Confusion?" I echoed, my voice steady. "Yes!" Jared jumped in, his voice rushed and panicked. "There must have been a mix-up. I downloaded the wrong version of the report." "Which version would that be?" I asked, turning to him now. "The one you didn't create?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "I'd like to make something clear," I continued. "I've documented every update I made, and all the timestamps are stored on the internal server. The version you used was deliberately created as a draft for testing visual formats. It was never intended as final material, and it certainly wasn't shared with any instruction to present it." Lizette leaned back slowly in her chair. "And yet it was presented to the executive team as fact." Jared tried to laugh, but it came out choked. "I mean, come on. Maya's part of the team. I assumed we were aligned." I turned to Lizette. "Permission to be candid?" She nodded. "This has happened before," I said, repeatedly. "Jared has taken credit for my work several times in the past 6 months. I didn't say anything because I wanted to believe it was unintentional, but it's clear now that it was deliberate. So I decided to let the consequences catch up." Lizette looked from me to Jared and back again. Her silence spoke volumes. "I have copies of the accurate report," I added. "If you'd like, I can present the real data to the leadership team next week." Jared slumped in his seat, visibly deflating. Lizette was quiet for a moment longer before she finally spoke. "Thank you, Maya. Please send me the correct files and block time on my calendar for a walkthrough. Jared, you and I will speak separately." I didn't look back as I left the office. The next few days were a whirlwind. Word spread quickly. Jared's legend status crumbled almost overnight. His jokes no longer drew laughs in the break room. The VP of sales stopped inviting him to meetings. Even the intern who used to fawn over his ties started avoiding eye contact. Lizette scheduled a department-wide review of all projects moving forward. More structure, more accountability. And me. For the first time in 2 years, people started asking for my input directly. I found myself on calls with clients I'd only seen in passing, my inbox filled with invitations to contribute to cross-functional projects. Lizette started pulling me into one-on-one sessions to discuss potential growth roles. Still, I wasn't interested in gloating. I wasn't looking to bask in someone else's ruin. Jared had built his career on smoke and mirrors, and he had finally walked face first into the glass. I didn't push him. I just stopped protecting him from the fall. Late one evening, as I was packing up to leave, I found an envelope on my desk. No name on it. Just a simple folded note inside. "I get it now. I was wrong. I didn't think anyone noticed, but you did, and you let me bury myself. I guess I deserved it. Jay." For a long moment, I just stared at the note. I didn't feel pity, but I did feel something else. Closure. The following Monday, I stood in the very same conference room where Jared had unraveled. But this time, the spotlight was mine. I had spent the weekend double-checking every number, every chart, every slide. Unlike Jared's performance, my report wasn't just impressive, it was real. And reality has a way of speaking louder than fiction, especially in a room full of executives who'd just been burned by a smooth talker. Lizette opened the meeting. Thank you all for joining on short notice. Today, Maya Simmons will walk us through the actual Q1 forecast for our division. Her original report was inadvertently sidelined last week. I took a breath, stepped forward, and began. No pacing, no dramatic flourishes. Just me, a pointer, and the truth. Our projected growth in Q1 sits at a modest but realistic 6.3%. This is consistent with our 5-year seasonal pattern. However, what we should focus on is not the growth itself, but where it's coming from. As I moved through the slides, the tension in the room shifted. Where Jared had delivered dazzle, I brought substance. And it showed. Heads nodded. Questions were asked, good ones, and I had the answers ready. Lizette herself even leaned forward during one of the regional analysis charts and murmured, I didn't realize we had this much depth in our tracking. I smiled. That's because we've never connected this data across departments before. I wrote a script last quarter that syncs customer engagement metrics with conversion data in near real time. We've been piloting it in the Midwest region. The CFO raised an eyebrow. And what were the results? I changed the slide. A 14% increase in retention over 6 weeks. Now that got attention. By the end of the presentation, the room was quiet again. But this time, the silence was filled with focus, not discomfort. When I closed my laptop, Lizette spoke first. Excellent work, Maya. This is exactly the kind of clarity we need. I'll personally review this with the regional teams. I nodded, heart still pounding. The VP of Operations cleared his throat. Frankly, I'm impressed. Why haven't we seen this level of insight before? I hesitated. Lizette answered for me. Because someone else was taking credit for Maya's work. That won't be happening again. The meeting ended with quiet congratulations. A few executives came up to shake my hand. And for the first time since I'd joined the company, I felt seen. Not just as someone good at numbers, but as someone who belonged in that room. That afternoon, Lizette called me into her office. You probably know where this is going, she said with a faint smile. Promotion? I asked, half joking. Close. I want you to lead the forecasting division. I blinked. That's Jared's position. Not anymore. He'll be transitioning out over the next month. I swallowed. So I'd be managing the same team? Correct. And you'd report directly to me. A million thoughts rushed through my head. I'd gone from invisible to indispensable in a matter of days. And while I hadn't planned to sabotage Jared just to get a raise, it felt poetic that stepping out of his shadow was what finally got me here. I accept, I said, steadying my voice. On one condition. Lizette raised an eyebrow. Name it. I want to rebuild the team structure. Less competition, more collaboration. We've created a culture where everyone is scrambling for personal wins, and that's how people like Jared thrive. I want to change that. Her smile widened. You've got the job, Maya. Make it happen. The next day, Jared cleaned out his desk. He didn't say much, just nodded to me across the floor. No anger, no words. But as he passed, he stopped. I always thought I was the smartest person in the room, he said quietly. But I didn't even see you. I nodded. That was your first mistake. He gave a rueful laugh and walked away, suit wrinkled, reputation in tatters. And me? I sat back down at my desk and started planning my first team meeting as department lead. The first thing I did as head of forecasting was move Jared's desk. Not out of spite, but because the team needed a fresh start. That old corner he occupied like a throne was now empty, a constant reminder of the culture I was here to change. I didn't want people hoarding information anymore or polishing numbers just to look good. I wanted collaboration, truth, and integrity. And that started with me. I called my first team meeting the day after Jared officially left. The analysts, 7 in total, filtered into the room quietly, many of them looking cautious, unsure of what to expect. They'd seen promotions before, but none quite like this. I'd gone from sitting beside them to leading them in less than a week. "Let's keep this simple," I began. "You all know what happened, and I'm not here to relive it." Some glanced at each other. No one spoke. "I want to talk about what we build next. This team is full of talent, I've seen it. But we've been operating like we're all competing for the same piece of bread. That ends now." One of the junior analysts, Deja, raised her hand. "Are we still expected to deliver solo reports? Or are you changing that too?" "I'm changing that. From now on, every forecast gets 2 reviewers from the team before it reaches my desk. We're going to start peer-checking each other's numbers. If the report is strong, great. Say it. If something's off, fix it together." There was a pause. A few uncertain nods. "And I want 1 volunteer every month to teach the group something new. An Excel trick, a script, a data source, whatever. We level each other up, or we fall behind together." That got a few smiles. "I'm not here to be a micromanager. I trust all of you. But that trust works both ways. If you're struggling, ask for help. If you see someone trying to take shortcuts, call it out." Jared didn't fail because he wasn't smart. He failed because he thought appearances mattered more than accuracy. We're not doing that anymore. When the meeting ended, the air felt lighter. Not celebratory, but curious. Hopeful. The changes took root slowly. At first, people were hesitant. But within 2 weeks, we were seeing smoother workflows and faster turnarounds. I paired Deja with Marcus, an analyst who'd mostly kept to himself, and they discovered a pattern in holiday shopping data that we ended up presenting to the national sales team. I gave them full credit. I wasn't just managing anymore. I was leading, and it felt good. One night, I stayed late reviewing quarterly projections when Deja knocked on my office door. "Got a minute?" she asked, holding a file. "Sure." She sat down, nervously adjusting her glasses. "I just wanted to say thanks." "For what?" "For sticking your neck out. For making space. Before this, I thought I'd be stuck doing filler reports until I quit or got lucky." I smiled. "You're not here to be lucky, Deja. You're here because you're capable." She hesitated. Was it scary, turning Jared in? I thought about it. The weight of the decision. The fear of being labeled a troublemaker. The risk that no one would believe me. "Yes," I said. "But I realized something. Keeping the peace shouldn't come at the cost of your dignity. And when someone else is using your silence to climb over you, it's not loyalty, it's submission." She nodded slowly. "I hope I'm as brave one day." "You already are," I said. "You're still here." A few days later, Lizette invited me to a quarterly executive lunch, something I'd never been included in before. Around that long, polished table, I wasn't just another number cruncher anymore. I was consulted, quoted, respected. During the meal, one of the VPs leaned over and said, "That was a hell of a move, letting him present your fake report." I took a sip of water. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. He nodded. Still gutsy. It was more than guts, it was strategy, born from frustration, but executed with clarity. I'd learned something valuable. Sometimes silence speaks louder than confrontation. Sometimes you don't have to fight to win. You just have to stop shielding the liar. 3 months later, life looked completely different. My office was no longer a borrowed corner or a temporary seat near the copier. It had a nameplate now. People knocked before they entered. More importantly, they listened when I spoke. I had become more than just the data girl. I had become the person others consulted when it mattered. And not because I was loud or flashy or polished, but because I was right. Because I earned it. One afternoon, while reviewing next quarter's projections, I received an unexpected email. The sender's name stopped me cold. Jared M. Donnelly. Subject? Coffee? I stared at it for a long time. After everything? After humiliating himself? Getting removed? and disappearing without so much as a farewell? Now he wanted coffee? I almost deleted it, but something made me hesitate. I clicked. Hey Maya, I've had a lot of time to think. I know I don't deserve your time, but if you're willing, I'd like to talk. No excuses, just coffee, my treat. Jared, I closed the laptop. I didn't respond that day, or the next. But by the end of the week, I found myself at a quiet cafe near the office, waiting. He walked in, looking different. Simpler clothes, less swagger, a tired kind of humility. Maya, he said with a cautious smile. Jared. We sat. The silence stretched for a while. I guess I owe you a lot, he finally said. I didn't come for apologies. Fair, but you're getting one anyway. He leaned forward. You were better than me, Maya. Everyone knew it. I just hoped they wouldn't see it before I got ahead, and I hated you for making it look easy. I blinked. You thought it was easy? You didn't scramble. You didn't self-promote. You didn't brag. You just did the work, and that terrified me. I sighed. Jared, you could have worked with me. I know that now. He looked at his coffee. I just didn't want to be the guy behind the girl. That sentence hung in the air. Eventually, I said, then maybe it's good things happened the way they did. Because now you know that trying to steal someone's shine never makes you brighter. It just leaves you exposed. He nodded. You taught me something too, I added. That speaking up doesn't make you difficult. It makes you strong. He looked up, surprised. Most people don't learn that until it's too late, I said. He gave a faint smile. Maybe I'll get it right next time. When we parted ways, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel superior. I felt free. Weeks later, I was asked to speak at a company leadership summit. Me, speaking to directors and VPs about ethics in leadership. As I stood on stage, I looked out at the crowd and said, you don't always win by being the loudest. Sometimes you win by being the one who listens the closest. And if someone steals your work, let them. Because truth has a way of pulling the curtain back. Sooner or later, the empty ones always get exposed. But those who build with integrity? We don't need to steal credit. We earn it. The room applauded. Have you ever encountered similar incident before? If this story resonates with you, hit the like button and leave your story in the comment section. And of course, subscribe to my channel for more real, raw, and ridiculous stories.